There are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
If you're like me, it's lunchtime. And I want to thank our sponsors of the Faith on the Frontline radio broadcast in the form of Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, Marina Del Rey. And also Doolin's on Crenshaw, that soul food restaurant owned by Greg Doolin, my good friend and brother, 4859 Crenshaw Boulevard, right here in Los Angeles, California. We want to thank them for being our special sponsors for Faith on the Front Line. I want to encourage all my Faith on the Front Line listeners, if you're hungry, you want seafood, Uncle Daryl's Cajun Cuisine is the place to go, right there at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard on the corner of Lincoln and Washington Boulevard. And if you want some soul food and you know you're not on a diet but need to be, but you're willing to skip it just for a quick second, I'd encourage you to go to Doolin's right there.
All right. Who's called in?
5859. Greg will take care of
This you, Mr. Farrell?
Wonderful staff will smile at you and they will pile
Okay,
it on.
just hold on,
I'm telling
okay?
you, it's ridiculous. Good food.
Yes.
All right, then we're going to go to our sponsors, and then we'll come in with our theme music, and then I'll introduce the segment, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so it's just one segment, right? About 5 minutes?
However long you have.
Okay.
Yeah, we just want to, we have from 11 to 12. It's open forum. People may be calling in. Larry Arber's going to call in, so we want to mix it up a little bit. But however long you have.
Got it.
Yes, sir. This is Reverend Campbell's with us.
How you doing, sir?
Hello.
This Reverend Campbell is also speaking to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is that my good brother Campbell?
If I knew.
Yes, sir.
That it is. Yes,
All
brother
right.
Campbell.
Yes, sir. So
Hey,
we,
man, happy
All
to hear
right.
it.
all right, so we'll be on in a couple minutes. We're going to run through our sponsors and commercials, and we're going to come on with our theme music, and then we'll introduce the segment. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Any of your shipping needs. Our special sponsors of Faith on the Front Line. He stepped out on faith, and let's step up and support him. Thank you.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history.
2013 is history. 2014 is a mystery. And the present is what you make it. Thank you so much for joining us on this first segment of Faith on the Front Line for this year, 2014. We wish you a blessed new year. I don't say happy because happy is based on what's happening. But when you're blessed, it doesn't matter what's going on. You know that in the end, you will be victorious if you keep faith on the front line. And especially if your faith is effectuated through your actions. And I am thankful to be able to be a part of this entrepreneurial venture, this pioneering of pushing the borders and boundaries of internet radio and communication on this global network of LA Talk Live, where it's more than just talk. And Faith on the Front Line is pleased to be one of the featured broadcasts where we don't just talk about it, we are about it. And we have the blessing and the esteemed pleasure of being a part of a team with my mentor and good friend, the Reverend William Monroe Campbell, the pastor of Mount Gilead Baptist Church located at 92nd and Normandy, and was simply thankful. Say hello to us.
Greetings and good morning. I was just thinking as you talked about the difference between being happy and being blessed.
Mm-hmm.
The source of happiness and
Yes,
a source
sir.
of blessing. Happiness tends to be temporal, which
Yes,
means
sir.
it can fade and
Don't you
dance
see?
around you.
That's right.
Whereas blessing means that your source is the eternal.
That's right.
That means it has a foundation
That's
that
it.
transcends time, conditions, and
That's right.
circumstances.
That's right.
And even when things get ugly,
That's right.
you can still have a sense of being blessed by the Almighty,
That's
who
right.
has extended His love, His grace, and His mercy to
No
us.
question.
So it's in that sense that I join with praying God's blessing upon all who, with whom we have opportunity to share. And certainly as we move into this new year, we have need to know that we're undergirded about by He who transcends all of us.
That's right. And makes things happen.
Yes.
And blesses us with the perspectives. Thank you so much. It's good to have you. Good to see you. Had a great holiday.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. The we have two daughters who live out of town.
Yes.
One who's in the frigid area of New York
Ah,
right now,
yes.
and the other who's in the frigid
Under snow.
area of Washington D.C. right
Hallelujah.
now. But they were home for Christmas, so
I
you know
see.
they were rejoicing.
Yes, sir. They haven't made it back yet, have they?
No, they're back. They're back in New York and back in D.C. And
They
then
wish
my
they were
son,
here,
who was
I'm
here
sure.
with our granddaughter, and his wife, and our granddaughter. So all the family gathered this Christmas, and it was a blessed time and experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's what it's about. Family. It's about coming together, making memories, and associating your presence with some of the great experiences that your grandchildren have. I am thankful to announce and welcome into the world Michael Josiah Logan,
All right.
who is my eldest son's newest arrival. They
All right.
induced on the 28th of last Saturday. And MJ
Congratulations.
is making his way.
All right.
Yes,
Very
sir.
good.
They have a
Very
picture
good.
of him with his finger on his face saying, "Where is my G Daddy?"
All right.
So we're going to have to go see him. You understand. We got to
That
go make
works.
that. They already got me.
All
I
right.
already wondering.
Oh, yeah.
Like that Malcolm X thing with the finger up on it.
Okay.
Good to see my man Van in the house. What's going on, Big Van? You all right? Say hello to us.
Hello. Yes, I'm blessed, man. It's
Fantastic.
been a wonderful 2013, but it's going to be a glorious 2014. And I'm just glad to be here with you two men. Inspiring me to be the best that I can be.
Yes, sir. Well, it's a mutual inspiration society.
All right.
Yes.
So we appreciate so much having you on. And today we are grateful for the opportunity to talk about one of the profoundly interesting and important issues of the day. We kind of hit on it in a sort of a necrology last week as we spoke about some of our luminaries who have transitioned during 2013, and one presumably close to home and very dear to all of us was Miss Marguerite Lamont. And so we talked about her in reference to her work and her commitment to children, and also the unfortunate concomitant issue with respect to her vacant seat,
Yes.
which is a prevailing predicament for our community for a couple of reasons. One, I hate to say it, we don't plan, and we always react. And two, because now that we're scrambling, we're sort of in different camps, and which is, I think, a good thing. It shows that we're not a monolith when it comes to our community. We do think, and we are a people who are pragmatic in some ways, meaning we do kind of walk through particular prescribed protocols and procedures, whichever camp we might be in. So this is an extremely, I think, an interesting conversation today as we welcome. I'm going to let you introduce our friend and talk about the significance, the historical significance of this young man, and why it's so important to have him on.
I think we got cut off from him. We got another caller.
Okay, please let him in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and I think that's probably brother. But introduce Farrell, and then Larry Aubrey's on, I believe, as well.
It's interesting. We have persons who have paved the way into a representation for us in the decision-making arena of our community. In the city of Los Angeles, one such person is the Honorable Robert Farrell.
Absolutely.
Robert Farrell was successor to the Honorable Billy Mills in holding the 8th Council District seat, and served accordingly during the time that the Honorable Thomas Bradley was the mayor of Los Angeles, and has since the time of his completed tenure on the city council has continued to have a presence in the community and to have conversation and voice regarding the issues that affect us as a community. And so as we deal today with the issue of education and how we proceed in terms of the District 1 seat that had been held by the Honorable Dr. Marguerite Poindexter Lamont, we welcome his voice in this conversation.
Freedom Rider
that's right. That becomes a part of that. And then, as you mentioned, he also participated in the historic Freedom Ride movement. Let me add a caveat also. This year, we, under the auspices of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the theme for this year, 2014, is Civil Rights in America. And so as we approach Black History Month, we'll be talking about civil rights in America. And one vestige of that was the Freedom Riders, those who defied the Southern system and entered into the South on buses and took their place standing as men and women of dignity and character. And he was one of those who ventured forth in terms of that, as well as then served in the city and continues to be present. So we welcome the Honorable Robert Farrell to be with us. Somebody did a salute to an organization last week. It happens that the Honorable Mr. Farrell is also a brother in the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity.
I see. I've been co-opted unbeknownst to me. I should have known this was a setup. I should have known. They heard the dog barking and they came to surround them. I tell you. Bless you, Mr. Farrell. It's good to have you. Say hello to us.
Good morning, Pastor Logan, and good morning, good friend and brother, Pastor Campbell.
Bless you, sir.
And I'm honored to be with you all today, and I like the way the conversation has started, because in many ways, what we're faced with in Los Angeles today is a big question mark. What was all that struggle about 50, 55, 60 years ago coming up today? When we still have these big gaps, these big voids in what has been such a long time promise to us coming from the public sector. Today, the main topic on my mind is dealing with public education and the difficulties that we have in this community in addressing the passing of our friend, Dr. Lamont, and addressing the legacy of her service and her dedication, as she would say, to her babies. Many times when we have a loss of our folks in office, the personal commitment and dedication is often lost in just the sheer mechanical nature of what governance is about. Governance is structured to have all the spaces filled and all the seats occupied and everything functioning. And when there is a vacancy, as quickly as possible, the law requires that boards and bodies reconstitute themselves. So in an interesting way, as we say farewell to a real heroine in our community, we're faced with the challenge of how do we address, as a community of people, a community of concerned people, the person to succeed her in that seat, as we look forward to a daunting calendar facing the Board of Education, literally starting next month, and at a time when there are some considerations as to how to proceed, given those two options under law. One is to appoint a successor to complete the unexpired term of Marguerite Lamont. The second is to open the rolls and just have an election.
Hold that point.
Yeah, some people.
Hold that point right there, Brother Farrell. I want to, if you don't mind, also welcome. I believe Brother Larry Aubrey is on the line.
Yes, I am.
Oh, wonderful. Good to have you on the line. And we want to, a journalist, a writer, I call him the Shotgun Shogun. He's known as shoot from the hip and the lip. He makes no bones about it. He's one
Tell
of the,
Dr. Campbell to stop snickering in the background.
Bless you, Brother Larry.
I mean, these are two of our legends, the luminary legends in our community.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really blessed to have them on the line.
And we need to note that Larry also served on the school board in the city of Inglewood, so he comes by way of that. He comes by way of his involvement with the NAACP as well as many other organizations that have been engaged in seeking to address issues in our community. Absolutely. He's one of those East Side boys that affected things in times past and continues to seek to be on board, engaged in dialogue, and particularly with the sensitivity to the challenge of a moral perspective.
Absolutely. So we welcome both of these giant gentlemen who are strong stalwarts in their own rights, and we are thankful. Honorable Farrell has already given the gist of his perspective. Greet us this morning, Mr. Aubrey, if you don't mind. Say hello to us and just give us a little gist of where you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to come on the show. I as a former school board member, I particularly am concerned with this issue, and also more specifically with Marguerite Lamont. Believe it or not, my wife was in school with Marguerite Lamont in New Orleans. I've known Marguerite Lamont for many years, and of course her tragic death leaves this vacancy. The point is, as mentioned earlier by Bob Farrell, whether this seat should be by appointment or by a special election. I think everyone is for an election. It should be the people speaking. Okay. In this particular instance, however, I think the people's needs are best served by an appointment, because a special election will require no less than 6, perhaps as much as 10 months to actually take place. And during that time, that seat, District 1, LAUSD seat, Marguerite Lamont's seat, will be vacant during that period of time. And I don't think that not only is it not advisable, I think in some ways it would be almost criminal as it relates to the children and the parents and the constituents of that district. In other words, the only way that there can be contiguous, in other words, ongoing representation in that seat, is to have an appointment by the Board of Education. And I'm suggesting that appointment can be held most not only respectfully, but the most qualified person would be Dr. George McKenna. I don't think that anyone has a problem with that. So that's my position at this point, and I think we can discuss that. And I think there are always two sides, but our side is real clear that a person who's eminently qualified to do that. But I think the important thing is, of course,
we can't. Of course, we cannot endorse a particular candidate per se. But we can talk about the process and the issues that are before us, and perhaps we can talk about all of
I got you, Reverend Lowen. Let me make this distinction.
All
in this
of those
case,
who are aspirants.
we're not talking about a candidate for office. We're talking about an appointment at this time to replace a person. So it's let's put it this way. If it's a 501c3 type thing that anybody's involved in, they can be involved in this process. I'm not talking about the station. I don't know about that, or you. I'm not saying. But in this particular instance, it makes a big difference relative to the appointment. Now, when this thing goes to an election, that's another story. You're talking about electing a candidate. That's a different. This is an interim situation at this moment to appoint someone to fill that vacancy, and that does allow even 501c3s. I'm just making that distinction, technical distinction, which we've researched. So anyway, that doesn't have any bearing on anything else. I just want to let you know that we're not talking about him as a long-term candidate at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The brief question: how much time remains for the term?
June 2015, approximately maybe 16 months. Yeah. Okay. That's the time. In other words, the regular normal cycle is up June of 2015. In other words, anyone appointed to that seat will be in that seat until June 2015.
That's a year and a half. That's okay. Well, I appreciate that. And presumably the person, whoever that person is, will probably be an incumbent who would certainly want to continue their tenure in that capacity. But I appreciate very much the distinction between the appointment process and certainly the election, which would take time in and of itself. And then it would be expensive and all of those things. So let's go right into it. Let's get into it some more. Talk to us. And we want to also allow and solicit our listeners to call in 323-473-3100. That's 323-473-3100. We'd like to hear from our community residents, or those who have vested interest, some of our teachers, perhaps parents who certainly want to call in, pastors who want to call in and talk about their particular perspective. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come right back. Hold on, Honorable Farrell, and also Brother Audrey. We'll be right back. Take a quick break, and we'll come back, and we'll get into it. Thank you so much.
Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. We're all right, huh?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Y'all can't talk during the commercial. Y'all can't talk during the commercial. Hold on a second.
People hand in hand, have I lived to see the milk and honey land, where hate's a dream and love forever stands.
If you're like me, it's lunchtime. And I want to thank our sponsors of the Faith on the Frontline radio broadcast in the form of Uncle Darrow's Cajun Cuisine at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, Marina Del Rey, and also Doolin's on Crenshaw, that soul food restaurant owned by Greg Doolin, my good friend and brother, 4859 Crenshaw Boulevard, right here in Los Angeles, California. We want to thank them for being our special sponsors for Faith on the Front Line. I want to encourage all my Faith on the Front Line listeners, if you're hungry, if you want seafood, Uncle Darrow's Cajun Cuisine is the place to go, right there at 2560 Lincoln Boulevard, on the corner of Lincoln and Washington Boulevard. And if you want some soul food and you know you're not on a diet but need to be, but you're willing to skip it just for a quick second, I'd encourage you to go to Doolin's right there on Crenshaw Boulevard, 4859. Greg will take care of you. His wonderful staff will smile at you, and they will pile it on. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Good food, good cuisine. Thank you for being our sponsors. Faith on the Frontline family, go and support Uncle Darrow's and Doolin's. Thank you so much. Faith on the Frontline listeners, this is Dr. Lewis Logan, your executive producer, giving thanks and props to one of our sponsors, United We Ship, 877-229-0577. That's 877-229-0577. Any shipping logistical needs you may have, whether it's a small letter or a larger parcel or whatever it is you need, Michelle Israel and the professional staff of United We Ship will take care of all of your shipping needs. They're going toe-to-toe with the big boys, UPS and FedEx, and they're going to make it happen nationwide through their network of shipping logistics capacity. They are sponsors of Faith on the Front Line, and I highly recommend that you call Michelle Israel, 877-229-0577 for any of your shipping needs. They are special sponsors of Faith on the Front Line. He stepped out on faith, and let's step up and support him. Thank you.
Oh, Jesus, I can't seem to fall asleep at night. I've been daydreaming about...
You're listening to LA Talk Live, where we want to just talk, and our broadcast is Faith on the Front Line. Welcome. Thank you so much for listening. Our call-in number is 323-473-3100, and I'm sitting here with my esteemed co-host, Reverend William Monroe Campbell. And we're also on the line with two of our vetted luminaries from the community and who have been a part of the historical fabric, not just locally but nationally, That is the Honorable Bob Farrell and our good brother Larry Aubrey. Thank you so much for being on the line, gentlemen, and thank you for your patience. Share with us, if you don't mind, a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more on what you're speaking of in terms of your perspective, the lost time, some of the imminent decisions that will impact the status of and affect the benefit of children and other, and also perhaps some of the aspirants that you know of who are presenting themselves for this this opportunity to serve.
Well, go ahead, Robert.
Well, gentlemen, I live in San Pedro. I live in the school board district number 7, where the president, Richard Vladovich, is our incumbent. And we in San Pedro, the people who think as I do, are right now calling on our representative to hear from the community. We're having a meeting in Watts on Saturday, 10 a.m., WOCAC in the auditorium this Saturday. And we are inviting people from organizations and parent groups and teachers and others who are concerned about the vacancy in District number 1 to come together to put the word out and get it clearly to Richard Vladovich that we do expect him to be present and sensitive to our needs and our desires when he sits down on Tuesday at the Board of Education. We want him to support an appointment, and we have a specific person in mind that he should appoint or support appointing. He should vote to appoint George McKenna. And I appreciate that Larry Aubrey has made a distinction that's a very important one for you, Pastor Logan. This isn't a political campaign where we believe you all have to be careful about what goes out on the airwaves, because technically this is something that
it's not an
allows
right.
for people in nonprofit organizations, people in churches, people in schools, just anyone to weigh in and have a say on who they believe should be an appointee when a vacancy is created in a public board or body. So we want our board rep, Richard Vladovich, to be open to and courageous enough to stand for appointment and stand for the appointment of George McKenna, a fellow principal. He served with George McKenna when they were younger men in their careers. He knows his expertise. He knows his qualities. And I think he knows that he would be an absolute great party to have on the board as issues such as the budget, some issues relating to local control, a whole bunch of financial considerations about this iPad scenario, which seems to be a scandal going on there at the Board of Education. The whole issue of how people develop the standards by which teachers teach, administrators provide oversight, and that our kids are expected to learn. And we believe, those of us who support the appointment, is that we need someone in that seat ASAP. The first district needs representation while these issues are going to be discussed, debated, and voted on between now and the end of this fiscal year, the end of 2014. Excuse me, the end of the 2013-2014 fiscal year, June 30. So we need the appointment now. The people of the first district deserve this kind of representation now, the same way we in the 7th district have it. And we believe the best person to serve on the board, and as well as filling the vacancy, George McKenna.
Let me ask you this question, Councilman. As we speak of the prospect of an interim appointment, what are the potentialities of then, subsequent to the completion of the term, Dr. McKenna becoming a candidate and then having the posture of an incumbent as over against others who would not have that posture?
Well, my friend, right about now I have to dance with you because I say, what's imminent is a decision to be made by the Board of Education on Tuesday to deal with decisions that are going to be made by that body from now till the end of June 2014. To go beyond that is to speculate.
2015,
I mean, no. I'm talking about the decisions that are going to be made between now and June of 2014, this year. To speculate about what if the person chooses to run next year is getting way out there. I think that
I just want to say the person appointed is appointed until 2015. That's what I'm saying. Not 2014.
Right.
2015.
But the point Mr. Farrell is making, though, is that there are critical decisions that are timely between now and June of this year. And therefore,
decisions are going to be made starting next week.
Yeah, right.
Week.
And therefore require. Yes, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, caller.
Who is this? Javon?
No, you're on a talk show. You're on LA. You're on a Faith on the Front Line. You're on a talk show.
Oh, this is Terrell Green.
Yes, ma'am. Did you want to? Are you calling to talk about the school board issue?
Talk about the who?
That's okay. You're on a talk show. Just hang up, sweetheart. You can call back.
All right, I'm gonna call back.
All right, thank you, sweetie. I apologize. So, any idea of a dollar figure? What how much money we're talking about in terms of the kinds of decisions that will be made between now and June, in terms of dollars and cents? Is it a couple of $1 billion, a few $1 million worth of decisions or arrangements, or what would you think?
It's at least $17 billion.
Wow.
That's the budget of the LA Unified School District.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's much, much larger than the budget of the city of Los Angeles. The school district is larger than the city of Los Angeles, and there are only 7 representatives, where in the city of Los Angeles you have a mayor and 15 members of the city council. I just mentioned that to give a sense of comparison of size and complexity. The Unified School District has transportation, it has law enforcement, it has a health care system, those clinics that are at the several schools. It runs an administration of people who are the administrators and the teachers and the people who support classroom activity. You have the classified employees who do everything else from doing the maintenance work to doing the very important infrastructure, bureaucratic stuff at each school and then tied into each district. It's a very, very large system. And when we look at what is at stake, I think you'd scratch your head and say, my gosh, I didn't know the school district was such a complex political system. And in a way, you look at that and say, man, that's the reason why, all things being equal, you would want to have the most capable, qualified, able person to be in the seat. Marguerite Lamont was that. She's gone through the whole chain from being a teacher to being an administrator, ultimately to become a member of the board that governs the LA Unified District. And in George McKenna, you have a comparable spirit, and you have someone of just extraordinary qualifications.
Okay. Brother Aubrey? Larry? Okay, we may have lost Larry. Hopefully he will rejoin us. I thank you for kind of opening that onion up for us, if you will, peeling back some of the layers, because when you talk about the complexity of it all, it is kind of daunting to think about the fact that you have this gauntlet, magnanimous system that is certainly in need of leadership that is reflective of the community, that has the community interest at heart. What would you, I mean, and I'm always, while I appreciate having the capacity to identify individuals who may be able to speak to and provide leadership in reference to those issues. What would you say? I'm also concerned about the larger agenda that to me supersedes a particular personality. And you did kind of speak on some of the areas of concern with respect to the district itself. But Mr. Farrell, what would be, I guess, the agenda going in for this particular, for Mr. McKenna, if he were the appointee?
The most important thing about George McKenna is that if he were appointed, okay, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, he could start work immediately. Up on issues, competent and capable, as much as the superintendent Deasy, who basically holds the title of the chief executive of the school district. And I'd like to just mention something, Reverend Campbell.
Yes.
We were coming up through the ranks at about the same time. People in this community had an opportunity to have someone appointed before. You remember the James Jones situation?
Jones,
Reverend
the
James,
pastor of the Westminster Presbyterian Church.
Yes. Do you remember the dynamics that were involved in that?
Yes.
And okay, I want to just reference that, because as you look at people who are being considered in this appointment process, it's as though we were back in the days of Jim Jones, and we were putting forward what we believe was the community's choice. Not everyone in the community supported the appointment, nor did everyone in the community support Jim Jones. But there was a core, a group of people who we tended to identify as community leaders, who came together in solidarity to support Jim Jones, and they called on their friends and allies from the civil rights movement, from the human rights movement, wherever they came from, to stand with the effort to get Jim Jones on that board. Right about now, you see something, I believe, which is comparable to that kind of mobilization of about 40 years ago, as people rally around this choice called George McKenna, in terms of background, temperament, expertise, all the rest. Part of the problem is that we are not a unified community. We probably never will be a unified community. But I hope for those who are looking and watching the process, they will pay attention to the fact that within 10 days, just 10 or 15 days, there's been an outpouring of more than 60 or 70 community organizations and a range of elected officials who have stood to say, we support George McKenna to be appointed to this vacancy because we really view it as being that important for the children. And for whatever reasons, we've been able to put aside our differences to say that in George McKenna, we have someone who is so outstanding and is such an appropriate person to watch out for the well-being of our children that those things are set aside for almost all of us.
What would you say would be, probably priority number one? Is if he were appointed, he would take issue with on, say, Wednesday. If he were appointed on Tuesday, would really begin to work with respect to on Wednesday.
I think the fundamental issue is going to be the budget.
The budget. Okay.
A $17 billion budget. Okay. Absolutely. And then there are a number of other policy issues that are significant and are going to be worthy of some good debate. Talking about such things as charter schools, this scandal around the iPads, the whole issue of standards. And Reverend Campbell, you remember this kind of debate. The core curriculum that is presented by administrators through teachers to our children is up for debate. There's a common core standard that is going to be really vigorously debated on the floor of the Board of Education in that horseshoe. And George is going to be, to me, the best representative we have to make sure that the well-being of all children in the LA Unified School District get a fair shake. Now, I think that he's super sensitive to the needs of our youngsters, and I believe that anyone who is super sensitive and prepared to act for the well-being of our children, speaks on behalf of all children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's an inclusive way of dealing with the challenges facing our young and the teachers and the administrators. And I think we just have a superior practitioner. But that's my view and the view of an increasing number of people.
I know it seems unfair to ask this, but let me do it notwithstanding. What would be the downside of bringing Dr. McKenna on board at this time?
The downside?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if the powers that be are prepared to just welcome a person like George McKenna to sit in a place of governance. Remember, if you look at the history of George McKenna, he's always taken on strong issues, and he's made a difference. I'd like to cite just one piece, and it's called Washington High School.
Yes.
Which back in the day was a place where people dreaded having their children go to school. And there were more young people being bused as part of that so-called integration program of busing. There were more young people being bused out of Washington High School than there were young people going to Washington High School to get an education. George McKenna gets appointed. Inside 4 years, he turns the school around so that it has a waiting list of people wanting their children to go to Washington Prep for a good, solid education that would lead them to the possibilities and following George's work there, the certainty that they'd have a shot at going to college. I mean, it's just a spectacular background that he would bring that some of his peers on the board might not have. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles. If you're concerned about kids, you have no problem in saying, welcome, colleague. I know you have a different set of skills than mine, but as we, the Board of Education, represent the taxpayers and parents of this school district, and we are the stewards of the education of their kids, we welcome you to the table because you're going to be able to give us a better opportunity to be a stronger board, to be able to engage our superintendent and the bureaucracy of the school district in a more sensitive manner because we have you as someone who is not only a peer of parents, teachers, educators, administrators, but your peers also include those who are superintendents of boards of education. So, you know, it works up that way. Perhaps people are not prepared to accept that.
There's also an interesting nexus that when George, there's an interesting nexus that when George moved forward from Washington Prep, his successor was Dr. Marguerite Poindexter Lamont.
You got it.
Interesting historical moment there. One kind of
and we hope that
we
hope that we'll be able to share in like manner that and as we honor the memory of Dr. Marguerite Lamont, her successor as first district representative for the unexpired term on LAUSD board is Dr. George McKenna.
Let me kind of probe just another kind of a question, and this has reference to. Go ahead and let the caller in if you don't mind, man. The whole matter of leadership development, because one of the concerns I've had is that it appears that the untimely transition of Ms. Lamont has left our community sort of scrambling for new leadership, and then to certainly, presumably, identify someone who has been certainly capable and active and effective in the school system in the past, and we would hope presumably would be in the future given the opportunity. How do we at the same time develop and have in queue fresh legs, new leaders, younger leaders? I mean, how do we balance that out? Because again, now, I mean, I have the highest respect for Dr. Farrell, but I would think he would probably, as an incumbent, want to continue his tenure. And hopefully, if he does the kind of if he performs in any way like you've already described and he's already exhibited, then certainly he may be demanded by the community to continue. And yet there are others who also may want to, be a part of this opportunity as well. So how do you balance that out, the new with that which is established?
Well, I'm back on. I'm sorry, Larry Aubrey, I was off the line.
Okay,
Bob, you want to answer that question? I just got a phone with Karen Bass, but go ahead, go on, Bob. You can answer that question if you like.
From my perspective, I value youth, but I've also come to understand that when the time comes to be involved in the administration of perhaps the second largest public school system in the United States with a budget of $17 billion, I would hope that we would focus on those who have the experience and capacity to do that. I don't think that comes with youth. I know that if one's in an election situation, anybody can stand and run. In elections, you often have a situation, anybody stand and run. But when we talk about looking at the qualities of someone to step in and continue a function, continue a role that's been established by someone like a Dr. Lamont, that's not a situation that's there for someone who's learning their craft. Mm-hmm. We're talking about an expectation of having someone who can step in and serve and know the issues and know the policies and know finance and know governance and know the ins and outs of dealing with unions and organizations representing administrators and others.
Well, then perhaps, maybe let me just press this a little bit, because the development of leadership, oftentimes, as you all know, and you probably can cite and point to your own mentors who took you under their wing and exposed you and took you places or what have you. Perhaps part of the agenda for the community would be to task Mr. McKenna with actually doing some of that in his own consortium of staffing and those with whom he works to do what he needs done. So perhaps.
Pastor, may I just offer this?
Sure.
There's a legacy of George McKenna that's out there already.
Okay.
There are people who are his students.
Okay.
Who are now teachers and administrators in LAUSD.
All right.
He has been, through the years, turning out crops of students in these annual cycles,
right,
who are now part of the infrastructure of LAUSD and a variety of other school systems. They are accomplished people who've gone off to college and gone beyond the BA to MA, PhD, right, EDD. These are the people who, in many instances, are the core of those who are rallying to have George McKenna appointed.
Okay.
His legacy is out there.
Okay.
May I offer this, Reverend Logan?
Yes,
just
sir.
Last night, some 75 young black professionals got together to hear Dr. McKenna and support Dr. McKenna. This is the head of the Young Black Democratic Club in Los Angeles, as well as other professionals, people in cybernetics, the whole thing in business. These are all young people who are supporting him. And just last night, he had a meeting that was attended by, of course, Dr. McKenna and Congresswoman Waters. So I mean, what you're saying is right on key, and that's happening. That's happening now. And let me add this while I have the thing. I was off the line because I was talking with Congresswoman Bass, who was flying back in. As she was calling me on the plane. She's coming back from Africa. You know, she's the chair of the congressional subcommittee on Africa. Anyway, the point is she's coming in. She and Holly Mitchell are together with us on this thing here, and they're supportive all the way. And I just want to let you know that. And incidentally, both of them initially, like some of us, had initially when Marguerite died, They were for, quote unquote, a special election. But then when it became out that the special election would mean the seat would be vacant, and of course when we'd have somebody who could fill that seat, then they moved over. That's a very, very important thing there. I think that in some ways I think it's courageous given the political realities. Sure. So I wanted to point those two things out. We're dealing with young professors. Last night, all these people, they each brought 10 people to the meeting last night on their word, called a meeting themselves, young black professionals last night. And I think it's a testimonial to the very thing that you're talking about, Dr. Logan, and involving young people in this process.
Can you also help us? You alluded to a 10-month period of time if they did, especially. Has there been a formal indication of how long it would, in fact, take to conduct a special election?
Yes. The estimate is that it cannot be held now until the earliest would be late March, and with the runoff very likely, it could not possibly be finished until June or July of this year now.
Which I guess goes back to Councilman Farrell's concern that then you lose the time period for the preparation for the next budget year.
That's exact. Not only the budget year, but those issues that we talked about, this new local control, what they call local control funding formula, where the money is allocated on the basis of need. The schools most in need, are supposed to be getting more. They have more of a say as to what happens in their local schools. These are that iPad thing, that whole thing. If you read the Times or heard recently in the last 2 or 3 days, we're paying a lot more money for these iPads, and then that's a whole other discussion. My point is there are major issues on the floor. And the budget is one of them, obviously a big one, a very large one. How that money will be cut up, nobody will be there sitting in that seat to represent the students, the parents, or the constituents in that district if it goes to a special election.
I think what I'm hearing, though, is that the community has an opportunity to press its respective district representatives who are already on the school board to, in fact, vote for the choice of the community itself. So in a sense, that's sort of an agenda-driven specific request or demand of the constituent communities. Is that what your sense is, both of you?
Yes, Dr. Logan, you're exactly right, because, for example, this is a community thing. I'm telling you, we got over 100 community individuals and community organizations involved, and nobody's giving this effort a dime, not a dime, okay?
Any pastors or faith leaders involved? Is there any? Have there been any kind of?
Yes, Reverend Saul's Holman Methodist involved. Reverend Don Wilson at Reverend Wilson's church. There are a couple of others. I can't think of them. Bob, you may.
And you held your meeting last Saturday.
But Reverend Saul's came over just within the last 24 hours, issued his statement and put it out publicly that he's for an appointment. And the appointment of Dr. George McKenna. That's Reverend Saul's over at Holman.
And you had your meeting last Saturday at Mount Tabor, was it?
Well, yes, it was. Mount Tabor. Very well attended. George can talk about that as well. Bob can talk about it as well. Very well attended. Very broad, very diverse group. We had seats for 40 around a table there in the room. 40 plus came, maybe more like 45 seats, and all took on special assignments. They will be part of the group that's meeting tomorrow at WLCAC at 10 in the morning. They'll be there for that as well.
And you're anticipating that the board will make its determination on this forthcoming Tuesday, which would be the 7th?
The board is scheduled to do that. I don't know if Robert I was off the line. I don't know if he talked about that. The board doesn't have to make a decision. They can put it off again. They tied last time, and I think we were responsible for that, incidentally. They tied on December the 17th. Wow. But the board does not have to. If they don't make a decision within 60 days, then the county superintendent of schools will call an election. That's under the law. But I think they'll do it before that. But to answer your question, they're not mandated to make a decision except within 60 days before the county would step in. So, and then even when they make that decision, they may make a decision, say, to appoint for it. That doesn't mean they'll appoint somebody. Then they'll set up a process for appointment. They'll vet that, different, et cetera, with people. That's the way that works. Now, if they call a special election, if they do vote on that, when they vote on that, that will then set the wheels in motion to of course to have that election. That's going to take a minimum of 6 to 8 months to complete.
Let me offer an additional
because
caveat.
those are statutory requirements that require certain things to go down. And incidentally, that election is governed by the city of Los Angeles, the charter, not the LA school district.
Okay. Let me offer an additional caveat. One of the members of Mount Gilead, who is a retired administrator in the district, has recently asked me to host a meeting on Friday evening, January 10th at 6 p.m. And we're looking at that. And so whichever way things go, there will be opportunity for additional conversation and that would again be a community, a meeting open to the community. For further conversation on Friday, January 10th at 6 p.m. at the Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church, 9201 South Normandy. That's 92nd and Normandy Avenue, which is in the heart of the district.
What time was that?
6 p.m. 6 p.m. on January 10th. Friday, January 10th at 6 p.m. 92nd and Normandy, the Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church.
Mr. Farrell, can you give us the address and location of the meeting that's happening tomorrow?
Yes, the meeting tomorrow is 10 a.m. at WLCLC Watts Labor Community Action Committee at 109, I think 10908, 109th and Central Avenue. On Central Avenue, 10900 Central Avenue. 109th Central.
All right. And I thought I heard, is the Honorable Farrell still on the line?
Yes.
Okay. You spoke of a meeting as well. When is your meeting?
That is the meeting.
Oh, that is
the same
okay.
one.
That's the meeting. The meeting. Okay. And that's 109 and 109th and Central.
Central Avenue.
Okay.
Yes.
And it starts at 10 o'clock. And what's basically the forum and the agenda, if you don't mind?
What's the what? Sorry.
What's the agenda? I mean, how will the meeting flow? Do you know?
I'm not sure of the specifics yet. I do know that Congressman Waters is also part of this. She's co-sponsor of the meeting, and so I'm sure she'll have her say, as any of the electeds usually do. But no, it'll be information, and I think it'll also be a thrust of the meeting, at least certainly of it for an appointment. I think that's going to be the thrust of that because that's what we're concerned about. But no, it's a question of mobilization and people calling. And remember, the whole thing here is the fourth vote on that board. That's the key at this time. Now, when it gets to the election, that's a whole set of dynamics, different dynamics. Right now, 4 votes are necessary to do anything, to do either thing, either to have a special election or to appoint. And that's the issue before us right now.
Any sense on how Mr. Vladovich is going to lean? Which way?
Bob may want to speak to that. I don't. We don't have at the moment. We're pressing him from several directions. That's what Karen Bass is. I'm sharing that with you. Phone calls about. She's talking to Janice Hahn about getting the Vladovich. I'm sorry.
Right. The key purpose of the meeting in Watts tomorrow is to mobilize those of us who are in the Vladovich district to get to our member to say, President Vladovich, we are calling on you to support an appointment of George McKenna. And we want that done because we believe it will be a benefit to our children, too. Notwithstanding the fact that you are our elected official in 7th District, we believe that this will enhance the quality of the Board of Education and its decision-making process on behalf of all children. So we have a direct benefit, even though it's a seating of a person in another district altogether. It's in our interest to be there, and we're mobilizing to do that. And we want to make sure that you, Dr. Richard Vladovich, listen to your constituents and vote for the appointment. You be the 4th vote. That's what we would like to do. And we'll stand up and cheer you and be supportive of you next time your chance is up, when your term is up. I mean, that's what this process is about, man.
It is. So 109th and Central, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Yes. You said Congresswoman Waters would be there, other representatives, I think perhaps we're expecting, perhaps even Congresswoman Bass present, and others in the community, yourselves. I'm sure Dr. McKenna will probably be there. And those who want to weigh in on this particular process and aspirant to make sure that the community has its voice and its say in who will represent them in this very important process. This most huge and well-funded district. We're talking about the future of not just LA, but of California itself, given the impact of this humongous district and the budgetary allocations and issues they're related. And certainly we want to make sure that even more so we instill or continue with this procedure or process of offering up the best in our community that we feel represents and reflects and our genius and our needs. So we appreciate very much your leadership thus far, and we hope that you'll keep us updated. We may need to do a sort of a updated version next week, if you don't mind. Kind of keep us in mind for the same time. We may not hold you hostage for this long, but we certainly would love to be able to follow up and get a sense of where things have transpired and how things are going and what we can expect for the future.
Oh, thank you for that invitation.
Absolutely.
I think this also
thank you much, both you and Pastor Campbell. Thanks very much.
I think this conversation also says that we are very, very, very concerned about our children and our young people. We're concerned about their education. We're concerned about their development. We're concerned about their possibilities. And so it should go without question that for all of the young people of our community, you are our priority. You are a priority of concern, and our engagement in this conversation really is about our commitment to our children and our young people, our future.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, we want to thank you so much for your presence with us. We've been on Faith on the Front Line. We've had the Honorable Bob Farrell talking with us, as well as the esteemed shotgun from Shogun, Mr. Larry Aubrey, who said it straight keeps
Thank you very
right.
much, Reverend Logan.
Thank you very much, brother.
Absolutely. And always we're thankful to have Reverend William Monroe Campbell of the Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church as our co-host. And thank you so much, Brother Van X. And I simply want to put this last plug in, and we'll put banners out and all of that. I want to invite both of you and others, because we're developing our Black Brown Clergy Coalition Agenda 2014, our King Chavez Strategic Action Breakfast, which takes into consideration the issues that we're talking about as we develop and build a movement on a foundation of trust between our respective communities. Presumably, we'd have to admit that Black and Brown communities have to coalesce and coordinate our efforts and our support and assets so that we can continue to reflect our needs and our agenda. So I want to give an invitation to you two gentlemen to come. It's on Thursday, January 16th at USWW's headquarters, 828 South Washington Boulevard, 90015. It'll be 10 a.m. to noon, and it'll be a strategic action breakfast. I think you were even there last year, Larry. With its
I need to get that. I'll get it offline if you're out of time.
Sure, I'll make sure it's up.
It's Thursday, January the what?
16th at 10 a.m. With security officers headquarters on Washington Boulevard.
Oh yeah. So exactly.
Absolutely. So we're expecting 100.
And that's 10 a.m.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One of the areas, we break up.
We commit to be back. We definitely will be back next week on the show. I mean, I will certainly be there. Bob, I don't know if you can make it. I will.
Yeah, we certainly would want to have an update.
At least part of the for an update next week.
Certainly. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you so much, listeners and viewers of Faith on the Front Line. This segment is concluding with the following comment. Okay. We appreciate so much all that you have done. And we want to, again, engage our listeners and our callers to call in. Faith on the Front Line, 323-473-3100. Until the Lord lets us come together again on next Friday, don't just talk about it, be about it. Peace.
God bless.